مدني الثمرات كالنخل العارم تزخر طيبا وثبات أنفاسك عطر يتضوع بالآيات وجليسك نور.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وصلى الله على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين، لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين. عجل الله تعالى فرجه الشريف وجعلنا من أعوانه وأنصاره. In this month, and in particular these days and nights, we remember the Holy Prophet of Islam, Prophet of Mercy, and also Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. So I thought to share with you some reflections on some of the hadith from Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his household about justice and injustice. Before I start reading and explaining these hadith, I would like to draw your attention to something which I think is very outstanding in understanding the moral achievement of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in his mission. What I am going to say maybe is not exclusive to Islam or the Prophet of Islam. Maybe this is something common also among other prophets. But for sure, the Prophet of Islam had better opportunity and more success to exhibit these things that inshallah I'm going to mention. The moral excellence of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the fact that the Prophet was mercy to all alameen, whether it means the worlds or all the intelligent beings, are things that either didn't exist in previous missions and prophets, or it didn't emerge so obvious and so clear in what they managed to do during their life. Especially if you add to this what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, that إنما بعثت لأتمم مكارم الأخلاق. So it seems that there is something special in the mission of the Prophet which makes him different, which makes him distinct, and that is his emphasis on akhlaq and his success in offering, in presenting a very good role model, an example of moral excellence. Now I want to mention some aspects of this moral excellence, and then inshallah I will focus more on justice. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in his book, in the Quran, in his sayings, in his practice, very clearly established and illustrated that there are values that apply to all people, regardless of their ethnicity, their color, their geographical location, and even regardless their faith. Whether they have faith in Islam or another faith, or they have no faith, still there are values that apply to them. Or in other words, we have moral responsibilities towards all human beings, regardless of their background, regardless of their faith. For example, when it comes to observing rights of people, observing justice, or avoiding injustice, oppression, zulm, Prophet is very clear, and the Quran is absolutely clear, that you cannot distinguish between Muslims and non-Muslims, between believers and non-believers, between friends and enemies. Even if you have enemies of your faith, not just enemies of you as individuals. Many times we have personal issues with some people. Our enemies are not necessarily enemies of truth, enemies of Islam, enemies of God. But even if you have enemies that fight you and show hostility towards you because of your faith, still you cannot do injustice to them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran very clearly, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا يجرمنكم شنآن قوم على ألا تعدلوا اعدلوا هو أقرب للتقوى. O those who believe, do not let hostility of some people, some communities, some groups, some parties make you unjust. Do not let hostility of them make you unjust, make you ignore or violate their rights. اعدلوا, be just. Not just observe justice with respect to your friends, to mu'mineen. No, even with your enemies you have to be just. اعدلوا هو أقرب للتقوى. Justice is closer to piety. So it shows that piety is not an internal value. Piety is not a relation that mu'mineen should observe among themselves. Your piety can be measured by what you do with respect to your fellow Muslim brothers and sisters, but also by what you do with respect to non-Muslims, even with respect to enemies. If you want to be pious, by justice with respect to enemies, you can be pious. So this is very important. I think humanity still has not fully understood the significance of this single instruction. If your enemy, which supposedly is enemy of God, which is not in the, most of the cases is not really an enemy of God. Most of the cases, if we have problems between different groups, different parties, different sects, different religions, most of the time it's because of misunderstanding, because of their ego, because of their selfishness, at least in one side, many times on both sides. But suppose that it's really a very distinct separation of truth and falsehood, and the party of truth is 100% observing all the requirements of being party of truth, and their enemies are 100% vicious. Even if you have such very clear separation and distinction, still you cannot do zulm to the other party. You cannot deny their rights. You cannot do harm to their children, to their elderlies, just because they belong to the opposite party. This is very important. Another thing that the Quran very clearly says is that when it comes to friendship, to kindness, to positive relation, faith is not a condition. You can have positive relation, friendship, supportive relation with the people who have no faith. If there are exceptions, it's not because they have no faith. If there are exceptions, it's because they are doing injustice. لا ينهاكم الله عن الذين لم يقاتلوكم في الدين ولم يخرجوكم من دياركم أن تبروهم وتقسطوا إليهم. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has no problem, has no issue with respect to you being kind, being friend with the people who have not forced you to leave, to flee from your home, those who have not been killing you. So it means that if there is a person who has no faith, but he is not doing injustice to me or my community, I can be friend. So this shows that friendship, cooperation are not conditional upon the other person belonging to my religion or to my mazhab. Or the very clear concept of rahmatun lil alameen. And alameen, as you know, is not only Muslims. Alameen includes all people. Even includes those who are not human beings and have intelligence. It includes jinns, even maybe angels. As there is a hadith that even Gabriel says, I have benefited from the mission of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, I want to focus on the issue of justice and injustice. But the list that I gave you, 3 examples, does not stop there. There are other things that you can, add to the list. For example, if a person is poor, you have universal instruction of helping the poor, whether they are Muslims or non-Muslims. Even if there are poor who have not been kind to you, if there are poor who were rich and when you were in need they didn't help you, still you have to help them. It has no limit. If there are people who have boycotted you, they have not observed, for example, the ties of kinship, still you have to be kind to them. That list goes on. But I want to focus on the issue of justice and injustice. One of the beautiful aspects of Islam is that in Islam we are not focused only on religious duties, on our obligations towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, our duties towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In Islam we have rights of Allah and rights of people. We have haqqullah and we have haqqun nas. Because unfortunately sometimes religious people tend to ignore right of people. They just focus on praying, fasting, doing the rituals. They think these are the only things that matter. Or if there is anything else that matters, they don't matter as much as these things matter. But Islam is very clear that we have haqqullah and haqqun nas. We have right of Allah and we have right of people. But Islam also adds to this that with respect to haqqun nas, even Allah is very concerned. So every case of haqqun nas is also haqqullah. And thirdly, not only Islam says Allah is concerned with haqqun nas, Islam says that Allah is more concerned when haqqun nas is not observed than when only his own right is not observed. Haqqun nas is much more important in the sight of Allah than purely haqqullah. Let me read for you some hadith. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam said, "Ma min madlamatin ashadda min madlamatin la yajidu sahibuha alayha awnan illa Allah azza wa jal." There is no injustice, there is no violation of rights, of haqq, more severe than the case in which you do injustice to someone who has no help, no helper, no one to come to rescue him other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if you do zulm to yourself or to a religious leader, or for example you don't observe haqqullah, it's all zulm. Man yata'adda hudud Allah faqad zalama nafsah. If you don't pray, you have done zulm. If you don't fast, you have done zulm. But among all the cases of zulm, those cases that are between you and people, especially the people who are lower than you, they are weak, they don't have anyone to help them other than Allah, that is the greatest zulm. So the greatest zulm is not when you don't say your prayer, or when you don't fast, or when you don't perform hajj. The greatest zulm is when you do zulm to another person who is weak, who is vulnerable, who has no group, no organized group to help him, to support him, or he doesn't belong to any strong, tribe or party to support him. This is the worst type of zulm. Abu Hamza Thumali narrates from Imam Baqir alayhi salam that Imam Baqir alayhi salam said, "Lamma hadara Ali ibn al-Husayn alayhi salam al-wafat, dhammani ila sadrih." When Imam Zainul Abidin, so Imam Baqir is talking about his father. He says, when Imam Zainul Abidin was approaching his departure from this world, he embraced me and took me close to his chest. ثم قال يا بني أوصيك بما أوصاني به أبي حين حضرته الوفاة. I want to give you an advice that my father gave me when he was leaving this world, when he was dying. وبما ذكر أن أباه أوصى به. Imam Zainul Abidin says to Imam Baqir, I want to give you an advice that my father Imam Hussein gave me, and he said that also he was given the same advice by his father Amirul Mu'mineen. So it seems that all the Imams before leaving this dunya, when they wanted to give some pieces of advice to the next Imam, they mentioned this point. Maybe they mentioned, of course, other things, but at least this point was also one of the things that every Imam mentioned in his very last moments of life. Ya bunayya, oh my dear son, إياك وظلم من لا يجد عليك ناصرا إلا الله. Be very careful, very concerned about doing injustice to someone who has no helper other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Someone who is weak, someone who is vulnerable, maybe a child, maybe a woman, maybe a stranger, maybe a refugee, maybe a person who is your employee. He needs this job, he needs this, work, but you are not treating him fairly. He has to always compromise because he needs, but you are unfortunately taking advantage and doing zulm. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Iyyakum wa da'wat al-mazlum wa in kana min kafirin." Be very worried about the prayer, the call of an oppressed person. It means someone that you have oppressed him, someone that you have treated him with injustice. Be very worried about the prayer of that person if he calls upon Allah against you. وَإِنْ كَانَ مِنْ كَافِرٍ. Even if this call is coming from a person who has no faith. فَإِنَّهُ. This is very beautiful. This is hadith from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. فَإِنَّهُ لَيْسَ لَهَا حِجَابٌ مِّن دُونِ اللَّهِ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ. The call of an oppressed person would reach Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without any barrier, any obstacle stopping or blocking that call. Many times the calls of mu'minin even can be blocked. We say to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in dua, Allahumma aghfir li adh-dhunub allati tahbasu ad-du'a. Or we ask Allah for refuge with respect to men dua in la yusma'. So many times du'as can be blocked. But dua of mazloom, even if he is kafir, can reach Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This shows that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is very, very concerned about injustice. No matter who is doing injustice and who is being treated with injustice. If you are a believer and you are doing injustice, it makes it worse. Not it makes it, less important. Because you are doing this and you bring the shame to faith. You bring shame to religion. If you are doing injustice as a believer. And if injustice is done to a person who has no faith, it doesn't reduce the problem. Even an atheist, if he is treated with injustice and in his heart he curses you, he asks bad for you, even if he doesn't know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but in his heart he has problem with you, that is enough to destroy you. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam said, if someone does zulm, أخذ بها في نفسه أو في ماله أو في ولده. Injustice is one of the things that in most of the cases, if not all the cases, would be receiving justice in this world before the day of judgment. Some of the sins may only be kept for the day of judgment. The punishment may come later. But injustice is one of those sins that destroys us in this world before the hereafter. If someone does injustice to another person or a group of people, Hadith says, then he would see the impact on himself or his property and money or his children. This is the nature of this world. Not only in Allah's legislation, injustice is not tolerated, in Allah's creation also injustice is not tolerated. This world cannot swallow injustice, cannot accept and tolerate injustice. If a person is a person who has always been very careful about his health, and for example he has never smoked, when he wants to smoke, his body refuses. He starts coughing. His lungs would not accept a smoke. It wants to give it back to the sender. This world would not accept zulm. No matter who is doing zulm and to whom he is doing zulm. And this is in addition to Allah's legislation. So we have to be very careful. No one can get close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by only doing religious responsibilities and haqqullah. They are very important, but observing rights of people and treating them with justice is very, very important. There is another hadith like what we had from Imam Sadiq, but it is from Imam Baqir alayhi salam, that no one does injustice except that Allah will take him in his money or in himself. There is a beautiful hadith from Imam Kazim alayhi salam which shows the significance of children, the significance of women, and also how important it is to keep your promises no matter to whom you have given your promises. The beautiful hadith from Imam Kazim, it's in many books. إِذَا وَعَدْتُمُ السِّقَارِ, or in some versions it says as-sabyan. إِذَا وَعَدْتُمُ السِّقَارِ or إِذَا وَعَدْتُمُ السَّبْيَانِ, when you promise children. These children can be 4 years, 5 years, 6 years old. They cannot come and question you, challenge you, take you to the court, trouble you. So you may then take this easy. I have just promised my child or someone else's child. What can he do? He will forget. Imam Kazim alayhi salam says, as I said, Islam is trying to make things universal as much as possible. Keeping promise is necessary, no matter to whom you have given promise. إِذَا وَعَدْتُمُ السِّقَارِ أَوْ السِّبْيَانِ فَأَوْفُوا لَهُمْ. You must keep your promise. Then there is very beautiful argument here. You can argue in different ways, but this argument is very beautiful because it also shows how Allah looks at our relation with Him. Imam wants to say that with respect to children, you have to be even more careful. Not only you should not take it easy, you have to be more careful. Why? Because when you promise an adult and you don't keep it, the damage is not that destructive compared to the time that you keep a promise to a child. So with respect to child, you have to be more careful. Why? فَإِنَّهُمْ يَرَوْنَ إِنَّكُمُ الَّذِينَ تَرْزُقُونَهُمْ. Because your children look at you as their sustainers, as their lords. Your child has no one other than you. Your child totally rely on you. If you disappoint your child, that would be the end of the world for your child. Don't take it easy. For a child, just parents stopping showing love to him makes the world like hell. Because you are the Lord for that child. Never disappoint children. And this shows also how much Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also would be kind with his servants who really look at him as their only sustainer. Not those who cheat. But if someone really looks at Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as his sustainer, Allah is not going to disappoint him. Then Imam Kazim alayhi salam said, وَإِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَغْضِبُ لِشَيْءٍ كَغَضَبِهِ لِلنِّسَاءِ وَالصِّبْيَانِ. Allah never gets angry as much as he gets angry for women and children. It means that when a woman or a child are abused, are mistreated, Allah's anger reaches the peak. Because women and children are vulnerable. They may not be able to fight you back. You are supposed to look after your wife, your sister, your daughter. If na'uzu billah, instead of looking after them, you do zulm to them, do you think Allah would take this easy? If I mistreat my children, would Allah take this easy? إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَغْضِبُ لِشَيْءٍ كَغَضَبِهِ لِلنِّسَاءِ وَالصِّبْيَانِ. So this is Islam. This is Islam of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. So it's impossible someone who truly understands Islam and truly observes Islam to come and kill people, innocent people, kill children, women, old people, without feeling even a little sense of shame and guilt. These people are farther from Islam than kuffar. The people who carry the name of Islam, but they have not achieved even a slightest fragrance of Islam, in their spirit they are much more farther from Islam than the people who have no Islam. These are the people that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would inshallah take them on hold, responsible for what they have done, the zulm that they have done to people, the zulm that they have done to themselves, the zulm that they are doing to other Muslims, and the zulm that they are doing to Islam. But inshallah, the light of Islam would not be shadowed and clouded by such misunderstandings and such misrepresentations. We have to be careful to do our responsibility properly. We have to make sure that inshallah we would be the people that truly understand Islam and implement Islam, so that inshallah we have the honor of being part of the spread of light of truth inshallah in Akhir al-Zaman. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increase our love our ma'rifah, our insight, inshallah, day by day. May Allah enable us to resemble Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in his beautiful character, in his noble traits of character. May Allah enable us to absorb that beautiful light which comes from Rasulullah and then share it with other people by reflecting the light of the Prophet, inshallah, to other people. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala honor our generation by making our generation, inshallah, those people who pave for coming of Imam Zaman Ajjalallahu ta'ala farajahu sharif, and would serve Imam before and after he comes. May Allah give shifa and healing to all brothers and sisters who are ill. May Allah give shifa to all who suffer in their soul and body. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala send His rahmah to all people who have passed away, especially those who have rights upon us. Our parents, our foreparents, our teachers, our ulama, our maraji, the martyrs. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep us and our children, our friends, our brothers and sisters, always on the right path, inshallah. And may Allah make the last moment of our life the best moment of our life. Wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillah rabbil alamin.